Thank you very much, everyone who's joined us here tonight. We're honored to have Yelena Popovic here with us. She's the director of Man of God, which has premiered this year from Moscow to now its theatrical distribution in Greece, Russia, Serbia, and across the world. First of all, I'll say a little bit about Liberating Cinema. We're a charitable organization based in Edinburgh, committed to the representation, restoration, and exhibition of world cinema heritage. And one of the things we do regularly is run a masterclass series with film directors. And this is our kind of next masterclass, and we're really delighted, and I'm really delighted personally to have Yelena here with us to share with us her rich life experience and working on this film. So I'll say very short about Yelena, just introduction about Yelena, and then of course we'll get into kind of the masterclass. Yelena is a Serbian-American actress, writer, director, and producer. She wrote and directed Man of God and the film about the life of St Nektarios of Aegina. The film stars, as you saw, Arisa Vitalis, the Russian star Alexander Petrov, and the new Hollywood star Mickey Rourke. And we've selected it, and now this is more on our part, what I say, as really the most important work about film about faith since the work of Andrei Tarkovsky, and I think we can talk about that here. I think it'll be quite interesting. Yelena herself, she wrote and directed her feature debut, the 2013 NYVF Audience Award winner, LA Superheroes. She produced Monday Nights at 7, starring Edward James Olmos through her company Simeon Entertainment, and has several other active projects, which is including Dead Serious, Greta Garbo, and Moses the Black. So I think we'll have here to hear a lot today. She studied at this prestigious school, Playhouse West, an industry-recognized premier acting school and training ground for actors, writers, directors, and it was founded by Robert Carnegie and Jeff Goldblum. Now, Yelena's film that we've kind of shown at the beginning, Man of God, we can see that even those who have not seen it, and even those who have, can see what a masterful film it is. And now I kind of want to ask Yelena to get us going, really. We can see that she knows film, and from a technical point, it's fascinating, but there is more here than technicality. So, and there's a deep sense of inspiration that makes this film what it is. So perhaps Yelena, welcome, and you can obviously introduce yourself, and thank you for being here with us. But if you would like to say a little bit about your inspiration for this film and what brought you to make it.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Thank you everyone for joining tonight. It's my honor to be here. Thank you, Mina, for the wonderful things you're doing. What can I say? This was I'd say a very long journey. I think any filmmaker can say about his film, it's a long journey. Some films take a shorter period of time, but it's always a lot of work on our hands to start from an idea to get to find out what story we want to tell. Even if we have such a inspirational and powerful story, to focus on a couple of points that can carry the script and the story through. And I think I was very lucky, even though there were a lot of challenges with this story, because it's not an easy task to complete. I was lucky that have worked with very talented people, and that I think, I don't know if that's luck, but I had, as I always said, a deep understanding on some level of the story of St Nektarios, at least a part of his life story that I focused on, which was obviously focus was done on his difficulties and the persecution, which at the same time paralleled his extreme love and humility. So we could see those two worlds. And what the reason I embarked on making a movie about this, because I saw a clear drama in this project, and drama was the conflict that carried this film through, which was the obstacles that he incurred from the beginning until the end. That's what allow it to be a film rather than just a documentary or something that wouldn't be able to have a rhythm to keep the audience interested in the story. So that's what inspired me. I felt could be a decent film, and I hope I've done somewhat of that, and I was able to carry through the message of hope and forgiveness, and this premise, which was something that we can all relate to in all different aspects of our lives. It doesn't only have to be about the church, but everywhere, that the desire, unhealthy desire for power and self-love can be a very dangerous thing, and it definitely, it prevents us on a personal level to find peace, and makes the world a difficult place.
Thank you very much. What if there's one thing, maybe we can start kind of from the beginning. How did you, because I know when we spoke, you had said that this film had taken you, somewhat, it sounds like 8 or more years to realize from the initial idea that you had. So maybe you can take us on your journey a little bit about, your background in film, how you came to film in the first place, and then also how this project eventually arose, and what exactly attracted you to make it.
Of course. Well, I've studied in like, it's like a drama school. It's a study for Playhouse West. It's a ground. It's basically, I studied acting, drama, but a lot of directors and writers have come out of that school. Even if we use the same method and the same kind of teaching that was used in the group theater, then in actor studio, it was the Stanislavski method that a lot of great artists have benefited from, including Brando and Elia Kazan and Sidney Lumet and many others. I've really learned everything. I learned a lot of things. I was there for 2-3 years. I've finished my course, went from the beginning through intermediate to masterclass, and that has helped me to gain my confidence as an artist in this profession. And but one thing that I think what had shaped my little bit of my style was actually that what we have studied in that school, which was Stanford Meisner, who was once part of the group theater together with Lee Strasberg, and Meisner was more what we were focusing on in our study. He would say that acting is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. So this living truthfully and focusing on the truth was something that was very much engraved in all of us that were studying in that school, whether you're an actor or a writer, or you end up being a director, which happened to me, even though that wasn't my initial. I didn't even think of that at one point, but it's so. I think that what shaped my style, where because I was trained to work from inside out and to focus on the truth. When I have arrived at the stage to where I was going to write a script about St Nektarios, I very much used that method, and I think that's where some of the comparison maybe came to I know you've mentioned to Andrei Rublev or Tarkovsky. Not that I'm comparing myself to him. He's a genius, but I didn't try to imitate anybody or anything. It's just that I was naturally that's the way I work. I work from inside out, and this film very much had to be done this way in order for people to relate to the character. I was trying to so to go back to how it all came about. I was at that point when I was studying. I was seeing myself as more as a writer, as an actress. And at one point, like all of us in the industry, I was in Hollywood, and there was a script that I wrote that was called Passport, and it was something that had somewhat of a autobiographical story on some level, very small level. But then I extended it into some kind of drama, crime. I included all sorts of elements that could be appealing to the audience. But again, one thing that's very difficult is, we all know, especially when you're in Hollywood, is to raise money for the films that you're writing. And for example, I wrote a film about Greta Garbo. It's called Loveless. And the reason I wrote it was because I was told as an actress that I somewhat resemble her, and that if, and for me it was one of the really fine directors. I actually produced one of his films with Edward James Olmos. His name is Marty Sater. He's the one who encouraged me. He told me, listen, you know, I think you should really think of writing a script about her. No one's ever made a movie about her. And in order for you to even play a role like that, you would have to own the project to write the script. So when I researched, first I researched her life, because obviously if it was something that I couldn't relate to, regardless of the fact that, okay, I have maybe some physical similarities, I wouldn't have done that. But what attracted me to that story was that spiritual side of her, which I must say she must have had, because to be on the greatest movie star in the world, to be on top of the world with your career, and to make a conscious decision to leave and never come back, and then live life of a hermit practically to the rest of your life, that you must have somewhat of a spiritual quality. And this was what actually attracted me to that story. So I was already, faith had played a big part in my life. I always had, I can say, my own beliefs in God, and that had always carried me through. But more so Orthodox, where I was born. I've started to go to church when I was about 24 or 5 years old, in a more traditional way, and I have continued ever since. So forgive me if I'm all over the place right now, but I'm trying to just answer, to kind of show my journey a little bit. So then I've written in a couple of projects. Then I've done that film LA Superheroes. The reason I've done that, it's again, it was a shoestring budget. We did it, we shot it over the weekend. It was 17-day shoot, but this was an incredible experience. I played the lead role, I wrote the script, and I co-directed it. And then I realized when I did that I really enjoy working as a director, that I have affinity with working with actors, which is something that I obviously have learned very well being in the school that is teaching that method, and that's my strength. So then I was still thinking, okay, I was gonna do Greta Garbo after that. But in 2012, I came across a book after my father had passed away, and I was in Belgrade. This was actually a year after he passed away. I found a book. I was in the monastery. I visited a monastery after the liturgy in Belgrade, and I saw a book about St Nektarios of Aegina. And I thought, oh, wonderful, because I love reading about the saints. I bought it because I didn't know much about him. I heard a lot, and I wanted to discover him. But unlike the other books of saints that I have read, this book had some very strong impact on me. I would have to maybe get into some personal analysis to explain why. I don't know, but simply, I'm sure there are some deeper reasons for that. I could think of few, but it simply had a very strong impact. And I thought, maybe even now having a background in film at this point, and as an actress, I saw that it could be a film, a really good film. And I thought that the story like this is worth telling, especially nowadays. And this is what inspired me to start working on it. And as you can understand yourself, when you first, it took about a year for me to get an outline, to know what story I want to tell. Because again, where I come from the school that I came from, I had to crystallize what is this that I'm telling? What does it mean to me personally? Because as a film director, you're sort of putting yourself in every aspect of a shoot, and unless you're very specific and clear in what you're doing, it can be very fake and unappealing. Good directors are very specific, and they take everything very personally. So I felt that this story was a personal story. It had, now if I talk about my father, my father meant a lot to me. He was a man who, okay, he wasn't a metropolitan, he wasn't a monk, he was a layman, but he was a very honest and righteous person who was prosecuted because of that. And at one point he even lost his job because of something like that. And I watched him all his life just live really humbly, and there was a parallel in a way that I could, but that I personally understood. And I maybe that was part of my inspiration to dwell into the story. So then, as I said, after a year, after having an outline, I went to Aegina for the first time. Actually, that was my first time in Greece. That was 2000. Now this was summer of 2012 was when I bought a book. Summer of 2013 was when I flew to Greece, because my husband, Alexander Spotter, who's also a producer on the film, is half Greek. So it was a good opportunity for me to come and visit Greece. And naturally I went to Aegina, and in my own way, I went to visit St Nektarios, and I remember taking those 2 pages of outline, it's just what the script would look like eventually. And I put it on his tomb, and I asked him if it's God's will, because I don't know. I mean, this was something that was a very big responsibility. It wasn't just a story about anybody or somebody. It carries at least for me, I took it very seriously. And I asked him to help me, if it's God's will, if it's his will, to make this happen, to be a good film, film that can inspire people, and to be a good quality film that, it'd be worthwhile making. So I actually, that was 2013, then 2014, and 2015. Now, 2014, when I was back in Greece during the summer, I had a script already, and I did the same thing. I went to Aegina, and I've again done what I've done with the outline, and it's always a blessing to go there. I can always seriously recommend it to anybody. And in 2015, after I did it for the 3rd time, I went because when I lived in Los Angeles, I would often go to the monastery in Arizona, a monastery of St. Anthony the Great. And I decided at that point to tell the monks, because I was very close to them. I would often visit. Yelena, a friend from Arizona, was somebody that I would talk to, and Yelena Popovic, who is now the abbot of the monastery. And basically, I told him, this was for the first time I told somebody in the church, I said I would like to make a film about St Nektarios, and because I've taken this very seriously, I naturally had to get a blessing from somebody, from my spiritual father, or from somebody in the church. And since this was a Greek Orthodox monastery, and St Nektarios is a Greek Orthodox saint, I asked them to get their blessing, and they were very pleased to hear. I gave them the script. I said, this is the script. I mean, they just looked at it, and obviously they didn't read, but I remember Yelena Popovic, obviously Yelena Ephraim, the only thing they told me, they asked me one thing, and they said, this is very nice. And what's interesting, by the way, now we were talking about, this is 2015, and I've been going there since 2001 or 2002. So they're talking about almost like 15 years. And the monastery is called St. Anthony the Great. The main church, I've been under impression the whole time that it's dedicated to St. Anthony the Great. And it is, and this is the moment when I found that out, when Yelena Popovic told me, are you aware that the main church is dedicated to St. Nektarios of Aegina? I was like, actually I wasn't, I'm sorry. Maybe that was my bad, but And he says, no, I said, I thought it was dedicated to St. Anthony the Great. He said, no, actually it's dedicated to both St. Anthony the Great and St. Nektarios of Aegina. If you look at the main icons, you can see St. Nektarios. I said, well, I'm aware of that, but now it's even more interesting that I've been coming here for 15 years and I've been in the church that's dedicated to St. Nektarios of Aegina, and you know, I'm getting a blessing there. So that was quite amazing. So one thing they have told me was to try to have whoever is gonna, if it was to happen one day, to have an Orthodox actor who has faith, somebody who is who has belief to play the lead role. And that's the only thing, the only requirement that they've had of me. I mean, they didn't order me anything. They just simply asked that they would have liked to see that. And I said, of course, I would like to do that. And they said, if it's God's will, it's going to happen. So after that, the life had taken its course with me. I didn't, ironically, I ended up moving to Greece in June of 2016. And that's when I started to work on the film in a more serious manner. Even though I didn't move to Greece, originally I moved to Serbia end of 2015 because of some family reasons. I have 2 children, and my older son decided to stay in Belgrade. And not to get into too many personal details, but it was related to the family. So when things have taken its course, I ended up moving to Greece in 2016, not because of the film. That wasn't the main reason, but because I ended up coming to Greece in 2016, of June of 2016. And it was, I must say, a difficult part in my life, difficult course. And maybe as an artist who's been around for quite a while, I've done a couple of things, you know, life wasn't easy. I had the script, I had things that were already developed regarding the story. We even had an actor attached. It was a different actor at the time. I thought, I'm in Greece, maybe I'm here. That was just somebody would have said at that point a wishful thinking, but it turned out it wasn't. But it was, as you know, you work so hard, you struggle, and everything you do, you know, it maybe doesn't turn out the way you would like it to turn out, like you struggle, and of course the process is what's rewarding to an artist, and it always has been. But you know, you also want to complete something and get something done, and on that level, I thought to myself, well, maybe because I didn't plan on moving to Greece. It wasn't something that I wanted to do personally, but life kind of threw me in that direction. And because of that, I felt maybe I should start working on the film now, since I'm here. And yes, to be honest, the doors were opening in a very interesting way. It wasn't easy, but when I say the doors were opening, I know what I'm talking about, because when I was in Los Angeles, for those doors to open, it's almost like it takes a miracle, you know. So I'm, you know, all of a sudden, you know, there is a big producer that said, yes, I want to produce your film here. He was working with Angelopoulos. He did all of his films. He's a very, very well-known Greek producer. His name is Kostas Lambropoulos. So him and his production house have decided to help the film. So that was a pretty big deal. Then eventually I also was introduced to Aris Servetalis, who ended up playing the lead role, who did an amazing job. And I had access to all the top actors in Greece, and they were all willing to participate in the project, which made things much easier for me. Now, naturally, we planned on doing this as a Greek, Serbian, and I believe it was Croatian at the time, co-production. And therefore, we applied to the Greek Film Center to be who would be, in this case, the main co-producer. And Mr. Kostas Lambropoulos, my producer, he had applied many times before. He's somebody who is very well known, respected in Greece, and he would have usually gotten approved for the funds for his films. But this time, I mean, it's an interesting thing, because the film, even though I don't think this is a religious film, I didn't make it as I made it, I think this is a film about faith, and I made it for everyone to watch it, not just people that understand the religion or they're interested in religion and go to church. They, because of the subject matter, they actually declined. They felt that they could not green light something like this, which was interesting. Serbia had no problem with this, but Greece had a problem with it. And this was this is what my producer told me when he spoke to a director at the time, Film Center. So we had found ourselves, oh, now we're going to have to depend on some of different kind of funding, which becomes like very difficult. But in the course of the matter, like, which this was really a little bit of a miracle, I must say, that the monastery from Mount Athos, the monks had found out through a friend of mine who was going there that I was involved in making a film about St Nektarios. They already knew at that point that there were some developments made towards making it. There were, there was an actor attached, quite famous actor in Greece, that they knew who he was. There was a big producer involved, and they had reached out to me at that point, asking me to meet with me and to see if they could help me. And that's how things have happened at that point, where the Igoumenos Hieronda, abbot of the monastery from Vatopedi, ended up really helping us to get the funds for this film. The funds were not handed to me from the monastery. He just simply managed to find a few different investors that were willing to help out for the project to start and to continue and to finish at one point. So this was, I mean, it was almost like incredible, because even though it was always an obstacle, it was always very difficult. Then we had to deal with the whole COVID situation. Once we were ready to film on March 15th of last year, that's exactly the day when the whole country was shut down. So we had to simply wait till June 8th to start shooting. And we had the shooting schedule was done for 7 weeks. We had 7 weeks to shoot. I must say that I was extremely lucky to have found a perfect director of photography for me. We have Panayotis Vasilakis, that is his name. And he has done only one feature film before, but when I saw his film, I was quite impressed. And I saw that this was the person I would like to work with. I saw the quality in his work that I felt was suitable for what I was trying to achieve with my film. And when we met, we understood each other. We had the same idea and vision. And I think that was a very important part of this. And we had enough time. What we did, we both worked that way. We had a lot of preparation. We went through the script a lot together. We worked on each scene. We knew exactly, we did, obviously the film book was done. We knew exactly what we wanted. Clearly, once you come on the set, me as a director, as a creator, I see different things and I adjust to it. But I like to be prepared when I work, especially when you're dealing with a limited budgets, and when we really don't have a luxury of reshooting things. So we were extremely well prepared. I had a fantastic costume designer, a set designer. Everybody was on the same page, and we had enough time to be prepared. And I had fantastic actors. I have worked with every one of them personally. One interesting thing about this film, at least I don't know if I would do this with every single film I would shoot, but there were no rehearsals. The only rehearsal that was done was there was a scene for those who have seen the film. There is a scene with the three bishops, archimandrites, in the beginning of the movie, and that's the scene that I had to rehearse because I needed to see them positioned together, and and how they interact with one another. But all the other scenes, basically what I have done, I've used the method that I've learned where I studied, which was that specific technique, and I have explained to, I mean, basically I had a very close relationship with each actor. They all understood very well what their role was about, what it meant to them, what the other character that they were going to work with, what that person means to them on a personal level, on the level of filmmaking. So it was all very, very well orchestrated. And I think because of that, we were able to have with all the obstacles that we were facing, we had the creativity was allowed to spark from all that. And yes, there were a lot of changes once you're in that space, and you see people, you get to work with people, you feel their energy, you feel the space that you're in, you see what's on the screen. There were many times, I would see right away, okay, I had this idea, but this is not going to work this way because of this or that. But this is, and little by little, we shot 5 weeks. We finished 5 weeks. Then there were some international actors like Alexander Petrov and Mickey Rourke. They had to come in. We had to wait because of some extra financing, and because of COVID, and because of the travel restrictions. We had 2 months of a break before we finished the last 2 weeks of shooting. Again, this worked in my advantage because my editor, Lampis Haralampis, he's a very well-known editor here in Greece. He's a fantastic editor. But because I'm one of those directors, I like to be in the editing room because I have it's my project, and I'm pretty clear on what I want and how I want it. So I had him come on the set like at least 2-3 times a week, so I can explain to him about the scenes that I was working on, what I was going for. There were sometimes scenes that I didn't want them edited, that there was a reason why I shot them in one take. Then there were some scenes that we were trying to go for possibly one take, but maybe they needed just a couple of cuts. So I had to explain to him what is this that we were going for, so he wouldn't come with some kind of a cut that absolutely makes no sense to what I'm trying to express. And we were on the same page. So where I'm going back to that break of 2 months, we edited 3/4 of a film. And then Zbigniew Preiser, who is an incredible composer. I mean, he worked on quite a few amazing films. He's won a lot of awards. He came and did the music for those 40 initial minutes, for 3/4 of the film. And that also had helped me once I saw that, and music helps with the rhythm. And because filmmaking is somewhat of a rhythm, it helped me to edit in a certain way and to reshape the script a little bit. And then once we went back to finish the last 2 weeks, I had clear picture of what I needed, what I didn't need. And I think that was actually very helpful for me. And then after 2 more weeks, that part was done. And then we were in editing, and from there on, and sound and all the rest.
Thank you very much, Yelena. I think what an incredible journey, I mean. But you also went into what I was going to ask you next is how you work. And so you've kind of gone into that, and that's very nice. Now, I think something about the film itself and your work, I've already received some questions in the chat, but maybe perhaps this one ties on very nicely to what you were just saying. You gave examples of cuts. How, can you give us an idea? I mean, you can talk about scenes as you wish, obviously, but are there scenes, that perhaps your editor would have thought to do different and you thought it was crucial to do it a certain way? What kind of cuts do you mean? I mean, I have a kind of bigger question after this, but perhaps that's quite a short one. If you...
Okay, well, every scene is different. Obviously, the scene with the 3 archimandrites in the room, you had to cut that scene because you had to focus on reactions, on what's going on in their world, in their head, and even the way they were positioned at the table. We didn't shoot that. We didn't go around with the camera. It was a static shooting, so you needed to cut to one another. I mean, but we were, in general, with this film, there was a plan with my director of photography to do as many scenes as possible, one take. like for example, scene with Metropolitan Theocritus at one point when he first meets him at the gathering. That scene was all one take. Like we followed the two of them through the space all the way through when he meets Ksenia and he has a conversation with her. That scene, in my opinion, if it was cut, it would not be what I was going for, you know. So we did many takes to make everything as perfect as possible, but we managed to pull it off. And then, for example, there is a scene also with St Nektarios and the president of the school when he's leaving, and when he comes in to say, "I'm sorry, actually, I want to thank you," and I remember filming that scene, and it was at one point when the president walks into the space and he crosses the camera and St Nektarios is looking at him, and there was something that happened in that performance. It was very magical. That even though we shot it from 3 different angles, I remember at that point I knew that yes, we're gonna need to cut when it made sense, but I wanted to let that scene breathe, and especially to allow for that magic to show on the screen, which had happened during the shoot, and it was pretty obvious. And I remember telling my script supervisor, I took a book and I wrote, "Do not edit this without me, like don't even attempt," you know. So it's like it's a feel, you know. Or for example, a scene where St Nektarios, after he was in a monastery and he receives a letter from a metropolitan that apparently he wasn't aware of the fact that he was building a monastery, which was a complete disillusionment. And when the nun Ksenia walks in, well, that was when I was in the space and knowing the actress and working with her before, I knew that I had to do something different in that space. So what I did, as you could see, there was, I remember telling the main actor, I told the DP, I said, "Listen, she's quite static. Just make sure we don't see her. We only see him." And I told him, "Just look down at the letter. Do not once look at her." And I remember Aris looking at me going like, "You don't want me once to look at her when she speaks to me?" I said, "I don't want you once to look at her until she tells you maybe you should leave, you should go." That's when I remember him kind of, I said, "Trust me on this." So he had trust with me. I was lucky that my actors had trusted me. So even though he's an amazing actor and he would be very demanding usually with what he wants, he just simply let go and he did what I told him. And that scene was obviously shot a certain way for a reason, because there was this lady, the nun Ksenia, was somebody who was very close to him. So when somebody's very close to you, for example, and I was able to see that on the spot, it wasn't something I was thinking about before. You don't have to look at them when you speak to them, and you're not offending them. You can be in your own world, and that person is there because there is a certain love, respect, friendship going on. That there is this unspoken understanding, and that's why I said you don't have to look at each other. Just the focus was on the main character. And then after, when she gained his attention, that's when she became visible, and the perspective changed, you know, in the scene. So I'm very much I follow the emotion with what I'm doing I can see that on the screen. I'm very much focused on the truth, especially when there are relationships in question, because many times I think when directors can find it difficult, you know, they have a scene, they have 2 people, how do we work this out? It can become very stale and very, I would say, fake, you know. So you have to really enter that space with and know exactly what you're trying to achieve within that scene, you know. So that's how those things have developed, you know, in general, whether I was cutting it or yeah. So
Wonderful. I think it really comes across like that you went by emotion, and that there's also this deep sense of subtlety and poetry of how you can, I like what you said about unspoken as well, how you connect certain scenes, and how that flows through the film. Because what's interesting about the film as well is there's so many scenes that are indoors. Of course, there are many outdoors as well, but there are so many scenes indoors, but there's no scene, and many spaces are, whether it's a church space or an office, or I mean, a church or an office or somewhere else. Although they're sometimes similar environments, every time every scene feels different. So it's really wonderful how you manage to do that. It's always there's always a development as well. So it's not just totally, it works very nicely. I wonder if we can say, because we've touched upon it, but if you can tell us perhaps, both to you personally, but maybe for those who don't know necessarily so much about St Nektarios, what attracted you really to the person and to the life of St Nektarios, that you mentioned it, what you found there, but perhaps you could tell us a little bit more, and then how Aris Vitalis, how he connects, and the actors, and how you told a story. I mean, how you chose to tell a story. Because one thing that strikes me is the film is not biographical. I mean, it's not like you watch St Nektarios, let's say, from childhood until his, repose, but it's very, precise, and it's looking at the meaning of his life as well, and his prayer and what he's doing. So perhaps tell us a little bit about that. It'd be wonderful to hear. I mean,
well, to go back to say that one of the premises of this script, of this story that I was telling, was that the desire for power destroys human soul, and in general, regardless of where you are and what you're trying to do. So that's why I chose to make, and also I chose to make a film from the moment that he was exiled from Egypt, because that's when his difficulties have started, and they haven't stopped until his last breath. And in general, that's something that, regardless of our background, that's something that I feel we can all relate to, with struggle, with injustice, with slander, with unjust prosecution. We all have it on some level in life. We all can say that, well, life is not fair. Why is this happening to me? How do I deal with this? So I think that's why people can relate to him. I try to make him as human as possible, because he was a human being. We even so this was my main focus. I was thinking, how do people relate to him? Because unless you can relate to him, you don't care about him. This is something that we've learned very well where I was studying, and it's you cannot dramatize saintlyhood. You cannot, I know maybe I didn't approach this from that perspective. You can only dramatize characters, the truth. You cannot make drama out of spirituality, and spirituality would come from being truthful, especially in his life, and so this was the story. And now when I was working with Aris, I remember this was a key point, because he's in every scene. He carries the movie practically, and he's a fantastic actor. But I remember when we were doing initial tests, just with lighting and stuff, I noticed something that was very important that day. At the beginning, of the early hours of shooting, even though he wasn't doing scenes, it was just a light test. He had a certain look on his face that was, in my opinion, not the right look for the film, because there was and nothing to do with lighting. There was certain, because he was rested. But then as the day had gone by and he became more tired, I saw this on his face, what I wanted. And I remember calling him, because Aris is an incredibly dedicated actor. He took this very seriously. So I showed him. I said, look at this. Look how you look here and how you look here. He says, no, you're right. This is exactly what I need to look like. We're not talking about looking on the outside, what's coming out from inside. Well, I said to him, well, you're going to have to come do every scene. Basically, you're going to have to exhaust yourself physically to get to this point and do the scene that way. And he agreed with me 100%. So what he did before he did any of the scenes, and he worked every day and very hard, he would do theater at night. He would sometimes not even sleep. and he would come and perform, because then he would have this spirituality that would come across because of the suffering and difficulties that he actually took upon himself. So there was an interesting technique that we had to help him to not only deliver the performance, but to have that aura that was needed for the film. So that was and I don't know if I have answered what attracted me to about St Nektarios was mainly the struggle that we all have, and that we all, I'm sure, think about, and whether we talk about it or don't talk about, whether we complain or not complain, but we make choices. And maybe I think it's fascinating how he dealt with the whole thing, and I think there was some kind of formula that worked, that it came across on the screen, and it affected people. There was another thing that we did, because, and I've told this to director of photography as well, I said, I want to make this, I want people to feel what he feels. Like, it was always about people relating to him. So that's why we chose the aspect ratio that's a little bit different than usual. We used the 1.66, which is something that we've seen in the older films. And because what it does, it leaves a little space above the head, and it's a little more narrow. So what it does, it makes you focus more on the character and what the character is going through, rather than on the surroundings, which is what I've emphasized from the beginning. I didn't want people to watch this from outside, and I didn't want them to look at this space and to say, I'm watching a movie about St Nektarios, he lived back there, and this is a great deco and things like that. I wanted people not to notice these things. Those things were important, they were done properly, not to throw off the viewer because they're not truthful, but the purpose was to bring the viewer inside of the head of the actor and St Nektarios. So that was a little bit of a that also helped, I think. And also the decision to desaturate the color was done from the beginning. Why? Because his life wasn't rosy in any shape or form, and there was also something about I feel that the desaturation that makes it timeless. And the reason that I wanted to make this, I wanted the audience to feel like they're not in. Yes, I will bring them back in time, but to feel like they're looking at this like as if it's happening right now, right in front of them. So these are all these little techniques that we have done to help that, to have that effect. And I hope that that answers a little bit of how.
It answers it so nicely. I think I had some questions about what's the connection with Tarkovsky. I think we can get into that. I think what you just said there as well about the desaturation and the timelessness, there is a great connection to start with. But one thing maybe to speak about the effect it has on people who watch the film, and I can say this for myself, and I know from what I've been reading, basically just that this will be kind of the final, I guess, question I have, and then we can open for Q&A from our audience, is how did the audience react? I mean, because we've had in Greece, for those who don't know, the film's been, the #1 in Greece. You told me that, it's broken box office records beyond even Titanic and all these films, and it's just been there
since the pandemic. No one's done that many times.
Yeah. No, but I mean, in the sense that it struck a chord with people, and I've met people from young to old who have gone to see the film and have come out, dramatically changed. People, and this is also people of faith, but people also who maybe don't have faith, or people who haven't, ever even been people who speak about faith at all. There's something in them that turns upside down, and I know that with several very concrete examples, from and also now in Serbia as well. What is it exactly that you think, is there that element of inspiration that strikes with people from the film, because it's not, I think there is that personal dimension, but I mean, there's something really unique in the film, that I think touches people, and, significantly, I would say. What do you think that makes the film have such a powerful effect on its audience, or why has it? Why do you think? I mean,
yeah. I first of all, I'm very happy that that's the case, because I've always said that I made this for the people. main reason was that I wanted to express something. I wanted to express part of myself and hopefully help people with my work, regardless of their belief system or where they come from. And I think that relatability, as we talked about, has a lot to do with it. I always believe that people will relate. And I was the one who told people, because of all these little elements. It was done in English. It was done, we used the unusual camera work. It was a lot of things were done on purpose to bring it closer to make it a little more modern looking. And I feel that I wanted younger audience to relate to this film. And I said, and people were, even my distributor who believed in the movie, and I would often hear, maybe not directly to my face, some of them were directly to my face, but that it's going to be only older ladies who go to church with their grandchildren that would go see the film. I said, no, that's not who I made a film for at all. And I actually, on the contrary, I made a film for the mainstream audience, and I've put very specific efforts into that, and it looks like I was right, because in Greece, at one point there was nobody older than 30 in the audience, and those were the people that were watching it 2-3 times. And well, we were very truthful with so many scenes, and we were talking about things that a lot of us, maybe even if we don't talk about it, we think about that, and especially younger people. So I think that's what had invoked that. There's a combination of many things. Sometimes, I mean, I'm going to quote Sidney Lumet here, who came from the same background as I mean, it was before me, but he had passed away now, but he's done some wonderful films. He said sometimes, you know, because he's done many films, he's somebody who's done 30-something movies. And he said, sometimes, you know, I look at the script, I like the script, I do everything that I think is correct. I go to see the you know, the dailies, and I see, and somehow things are just going in the right direction. Sometimes I have the great script and I have great actors, and something is off. So sometimes I must say that I've done my work. I've done what I felt was right. I've used the skills that I've had. I've chosen the story that was very personal to me, that I felt I could relate to. Therefore, I can put myself on the screen, in which case the audience would truly be able to relate. And I've done that. And the rest was up to, obviously, the creator to either bless it or to sink it. I don't know. Like that's, it looks like that there was like a special spark there. There's something obviously that I can't even explain. I cannot give that. There's no formula for that. Sometimes it just happens. But you need to have the right ingredients in order to invoke that. So that's all I can say.
I think that kind of wraps it up very nicely in terms of like our first part of the masterclass, and that spark. I mean, I have a question about that, but I'll let somebody else first. We can maybe move to the questions now to have from our audience and then to hear what they have to ask us. I've had many questions in the chat, so I can maybe ask somebody. The only thing I would say, if you want to ask a question, I'll please ask you to turn your camera on and just introduce yourselves. But I had questions from, I can just a sec. I had questions also from Mr. Voja Michunovic. Would you like to speak yourself, or I'll just ask you to turn your camera on?
Hello, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Hello.
Hello.
I can.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the problem you had with the Greek producers initially, and whether them knowing how the film fared, today still refuse to film something of a similar nature, or do you think they'll be more agreeable?
After me making the film, no.
So Yelena, can you repeat that?
The question is, do you think that they, after me making the film, that they would be more open for the films like this? Is that your question?
Yes, in the future, yes, yeah.
Well, I hope that would be the case, because I believe that the subject like this would appeal to people of all colors and backgrounds, you know, even though some people thought I was wrong. And I hope that this would definitely in Greece is done extremely well. So I am sure that that they will be more open towards making films like that. Even though I didn't do it for the monetary reasons, I did it from my heart to help people. But I believe that if you do that, that's the only way. Whether it does make money or not, you have a potential of actually being commercially successful if it's something that's honest. So I think that this, because this film has done well here, extremely well, I think it's, as a matter of fact, I know that. I even, a lot of people are coming to me. I mean, I can replicate, and I don't want to be replicating what I've done, but I hope it inspires other people to do the same in better. That's my goal.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Micunovic. Yes, if does anybody else have questions, please unmute yourself, but please put your camera on if you have any questions for Yelena.
Yes, hi Yelena, just a quick question. When are we going to see the movie in London, in UK?
Okay, I hope soon. All I can say is that so far, the film is still playing in Greece. It opened in Russia and in Serbia, ex-Yugo, and I know that the film will be playing. I mean, our sales agent has, that's who is trying to sell the rights to different territories. So far, it's going to be shown in France. That I know, France next year in February, or it's during the, I believe, Easter fast. In Italy, in Australia, South America, and we are going to be showing the film. There is Netherlands, I think, has bought the rights as well. And as you know now with COVID, that's why it's a little bit unpredictable. Even the local distributors, they have to decide when do they put it in theaters. Does it go straight to the, you know, transactional on television, or I don't know you know
will
what I'm
it
saying.
will it be on Netflix or Prime Video or somewhere online?
I wanted maybe to interrupt. No, sure. Please.
Can I just to answer the question, but because I know it's going to show in 10 different cities in the US starting in January. Because once the US is announced, I'm sure that England will have its own distribution. And that's what I would love to show the film in London and in England. So as soon as we know more about that, I'm sure that we're going to know when the film will be shown in England as well. So that's what that was. I was trying to answer your question in a long way.
Well, Tanya, thank you very much. I wanted only to add that if you do want to see the film, this is the point where there will be an announcement made today, I think. Basically, the film will be screened at the St Andrews Film Festival, which I'm running the program for. Our friend and colleague here, Boris Bozokov, he's the director of it, where it will be running in the end of November, and Yelena's film will close the festival. So the competition it should be announced today for the film, like across the social media. I'll also put it on our social media, but we'll be screening the film as part of the competition. So it will be an online festival, but there will be a strictly time, like when you can watch it. It'll be a one screening that will close the festival, probably around the 28th of November. So I will send all the details, and please keep updated, because then you'll have the opportunity. And I mean, we are also hoping that, you know, you'll get UK-wide distribution soon, so we can, because we've also had a lot of people responding and saying, you know, that they want to see the film here, and many that have personally also asked me to send them the film, and I obviously can't do that for everyone at the moment. So this is up to, you know, Yelena, and this is the production company. So this is, you know, so the film can get really the biggest exposure possible. So, but thank you for your question.
I have a question. First, Yelena, thank you so much for making the film. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I can really see that this film was made from the heart. I wanted to ask you, what was your decision, or why did you decide to have a cross over where Mickey Rourke was lying, and the icon of the Mother of God, where St Nektarios was lying, because there was like a very symmetrical shot, and all you could see was the icon and the cross. And to me, that spoke a lot. But I would like to hear what you, or whether there was anything behind it. If not,
Okay, it's interesting. I didn't obviously. It wasn't done on specifically on obviously the design. It had to make sense. I remember saying, okay, let that be there and this be here. Maybe it was more intuitive on my part. I didn't have any specific thought processing behind that, but it intuitively it made sense for whatever reason. I'm glad that
yeah,
that you have it had left an impact on you in some ways, but definitely again, you know, that specific scene was shot, as you remember, in a very that was at the end, as we were approaching the end of the film. We even used the camera angles that you were seeing them from above, which was almost like, you know, you had this feeling that you know, he was approaching his end, you know, things were closing up on him. So but yes, it you know, the ending was meant to be cathartic, and you know, it mimicked a little bit of a resurrection. So hopefully it had its effect.
yeah, absolutely. I really liked that the cross was over Mickey Rourke, because I had the feeling that like because after Mickey Rourke he got up, and I kind of thought about the resurrection, like he was almost resurrected, whereas over Saint Nektarios it was the icon of Mother of God. And to me that read as if he is now love, he is transcended past the physical plane, and I really liked that. I thought it was a perfect ending. And again, like thank you for being here and for showing us the film.
No, you're welcome. It's my pleasure, and I'm glad, as Mina said, that the film will be shown in at the festival.
Yeah,
So
you're
people
more
will
than
have a
welcome
chance
to
to
come
see.
and speak as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Boris, very much. I had another. It's a great question. I had another one. I didn't really think about that scene. It's wonderful how you put it. So this also opens my eyes on you. But I had a question in the chat also, just asking about, perhaps we can make this connection now with Tarkovsky. What's Yelena? You mentioned several things that made me think of Tarkovsky as well. You know, this desaturation, the timeless dimension, the connection of the saint's life and making it something that's now. And also the saint is a person, obviously, and not just someone, you know, we imagine saints being, I mean, obviously they're holy, and much, you know, closer to God and intercede, but at the same time, they're very much human, you know, and are, you know, were human when they were living as well, and still are. So, but my question is really related to, let me just find it also from the chat. Yes, what's the connection? I think, I mean, that's also, I guess, to me, that was directed, I mean, why I selected the film, but I guess I would like to ask you, is there a dimension now when we speak about faith, what you said, inside out? I mean, there's this aspect of, I mean, this is also something present in Orthodox iconography. I mean, I know now, if we just say, I mean, for safety, icons are venerated, they're holy in Orthodox tradition, that's another subject. But if we can make an analogy about film, this inside out perspective, I think, connects it with icons, because icons, you know, if in Orthodox iconography, the light comes from the inside, and that's how it's painted. And I wonder, you know, you talked about this inner dimension. I mean, could you say something about this? I don't want to, obviously, the Tarkovsky part you can relate to as you wish, but I'm just interested about this inside out way. How do you do that in film?
Well, to be honest, I didn't think of Tarkovsky. I didn't try to imitate Tarkovsky. I only watched Andrei Rublev. I must admit, a couple of times, and not in relation to this film. What I have watched more, I'm also a big fan of John Huston and his work, and I've actually watched him a lot before I've done this film. More because of some the framing and certain ways that the camera he uses the camera work. but I think that inside out work is just natural to me. I relate to that. I like, especially for this story. I don't know how else I would. It's either you're going to bring people inside of the movie, which is what with everything that we've done, whether it was the way we shot it, the way it was acted, the way, you know, even with the actors, I had to tone everybody down. I had to tell them not to move, not to have life inside, and not to, you know, not to do anything externally, to have so much inside. I really, even when I worked with them, even that was emphasized. And I'm kind of I mean, with the main actor, it wasn't a problem because he naturally has that. But with some other actors, I have to actually tame them, you know, so they don't become too theatrical. So in a sense, you know, it's something that I felt for this film. It was the only way. I didn't think so much of the space in the church, but I just felt the only way to again to make this as truthful. This film had to be truthful, because if it wasn't as truthful as possible, it would really fail because of the subject matter. You know, with some subject matters, you can maybe even get away with not being entirely truthful, not being so specific. But with this film, that was like extremely important. And so I really gave it all in every scene to make sure that there was no any kind of dishonesty or fakeness on any level, you know, and so that's where, how does it come from inside out? I believe that the way I was able to do that is because I put myself into the movie. I understood extremely well what every scene meant to me personally, and I put myself in the film, and this is how I think that was achieved. You know, that's the best I can explain. And I would advise people. I mean, listen, people, they're real geniuses like Dostoevsky. Okay, he's a writer. He's not a filmmaker, but he's an incredible writer. And when he was asked by his students, what should we write about? His answer was, write about things that you have understanding of, personal understanding of. This was his advice to his students, to people that were inspired by him, that were around him. So he said, if you don't understand something, no matter how exciting you think it's going to be, don't even bother. So I think that's Dostoevsky. That's probably Tarkovsky in some ways. You know, it probably comes from the same sort of background, you know, and I happen to be a big fan of Dostoevsky, and maybe somehow there is that relation. Not again, maybe it's good that I wasn't watching his, you know, because if I think a lot of people try to imitate Tarkovsky, and I didn't even, that even crossed my mind. I just was focusing on the truth and doing my work, and maybe there is some relation to it now because of this, or what I've explained, that he must have done that in his work on some level. You know, it must have been his focus.
Thank you. I think I meant if I can say thank you very much, because if I can say on our part why we selected the film and so invited you, I mean, it's an honor to have you, is for me, I didn't mean to, you know, when I make the comparison to Tarkovsky, it's not in a negative sense, in the sense, you know, positioning your work against his, because especially this happens a lot, and especially films that have any remote connection with Tarkovsky, it often, there's the association, and then suddenly that's the only point of comparison. But no, on the contrary, it's your film works very uniquely in its own right. And that's why, and as a film about faith and about life of St Nektarios, that's why it's, I mean, to me, fascinating, because I hadn't, you know, seen that, you know, since a film like Rublev, you know, because, and I think one connection, because if that was also, the question was also directed to me in terms of why we selected it and talked about it, Man of God, is I think what's unique about your film, if I can say, is the kind of way it functions by this really aesthetic logic of poetry, and this element where you look inside, and these intimate connections between people, and the relationship with God that runs throughout. I wouldn't like to, I have a favorite scene, but I would like to spoil it for some people who haven't seen the film yet. But I think that's from our part, at least. So I think, but I'm very grateful, you know, that's how you put it. So I think it's quite right. But we have another question. So please, yes. Dr. Miloranovic.
Yelena, good evening.
Good evening.
Good to see you. Thank you very much for tonight. What an exceptional film, and what an honor to actually learn and hear from you, and be able actually to ask you and see you. I think you brought a lot of joy to many people who saw this film, and I think, if I may say, that this explains the popularity of the film. And from also personal context, for instance, that I had, I didn't hear, everyone I heard who saw the film were, took it in their own personal way, but they were all taken back, and it really did have a great impact, I think, on many levels. I wanted to say, I was actually, there's many questions, but I won't keep you, or I don't want to take time from others, but what you said, you didn't make or didn't want to make a religious film, if I remember correctly. I think that was very interesting because, although the critics like to put film in a certain box or genre or whatever. I don't think that's a genre, but okay. I think you said a great truth there, because from what I heard and what I learned from the fathers of the church and so on, is that what is beyond time, when they speak about God as eternal and so on, it's where, actually, that's what Father Petros yesterday from the monastery of Essex said. It's where the law stops and the love of God begins. So in terms of religion, we can talk about religion, and people do talk from different aspects, but this film surpasses that category. So it's not a religious film. Maybe for some films we can say they are, and they purposely aim to be that. And there was, I think, a lot of discussion in the Western part of the world about the works of Dreyer or, others, like they created a religious film or a film of faith and so on, but this goes beyond. And it just reminded me of that. This is where love starts. So this, whatever you experienced in all this is that some love, some hope radiates from the film. That's I think why. I mean, that was, something that you actually now made me think of. And that's a great, I don't know, I was about to say that's a great success, but it's not even the right word. It's beyond that. It's a great thing to do. To achieve that. And I hope, although it will be, people of faith will want to see it, certainly, because it is about St Nektarios, and many people of faith, not just Orthodox, will want to see it, but I think, as you said, that it appeals on many levels. And the other thing, maybe it's not that important, but I thought about it, it's also a film like about belonging and not belonging. That was an interesting moment, with the beggar, again, not to spoil for people that are going to see it. The beggar is in a way some kind of outcast, but St Nektarios sits next to him, and they're together in this, and then not belonging, like he is not a Greek citizen. Okay, that's a technicality that somebody used to discredit him. But again, we have that. And then even with the monastery of not being recognized by this, well, later, of course, it was recognized by Synod and so on. But this kind of, where do you belong? Which again leads me to the next question, like, where do righteous people belong actually? Do they belong anywhere in this world? So,
well, that's a good question. I think just to go back a little bit, actually, you've sparked my thought process now with this question. It's a very good question. when you mentioned the homeless person, interestingly enough, St Nektarios felt at home with simple people, with people that the world cast out. You know, that's where he felt the most at home. So not with people that were together, so much together, and that they had positions, and that there were maybe that our world would view them as together. But he felt, now that you make me think about it, and I know this from my personal experience, I know this through my father, and it must have been for him as well. And this was conscious. I was aware of this, and that as you see in as you watch the movie, he always goes back. Every time there is a problem, every time the people that so-called are together in this world and have certain positions giving trouble, he always goes back to a very simple people. It's almost like he draws energy from that. That's where he feels at home. That was home for him. It was with the beggar, then it was with the cleaner. After he was again, he goes to the cleaner, and I did that on purpose. That was part of the rhythm in the movie, because I maybe did that because I have had personal experience with that, and I experienced that on a personal level. My father had experienced that, and I noticed even that he did that, and I could relate to that process. That, and you're right. Where do we really belong? Like, I lived in the U.S. I'm from Serbia, now I'm in Greece. You know, it's like, where do we feel at home? You know, and ultimately we find that home looks like it. We feel more at home as we become more selfless and more humble. It's one of those things, you know. So, but yes, there are certain places that would feel better, obviously, to be at.
Yes, thank you.
No.
Thank you very much.
Did I?
Yelena.
You're
Yes?
welcome.
No, were you going to say something? Or-
No, I was wondering if I answered the whole question because sometimes I talk and then I get inspired, but maybe I don't cover the whole
Yes,
thing.
yes, thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
I appreciate
I
everything.
had another question in the chat, but I see someone raise their hand. Goran, would you like to ask a question? Please introduce yourself if you like. Sorry, we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
I'm unmuted now. Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening, Yelena. Firstly, thank you for a wonderful and unique movie. I wanted just to ask about one detail in the movie to check if I'm right or wrong. When St Nektarios is leaving Egypt, he is reading the letters of the people from Egypt, and I thought the first woman voice was your voice. I don't know if I'm wrong or right, but it seemed to me that it was your voice, and it was really original and beautiful to me, because by that, like, you transcend time and place and make it not just a history or a religious movie, but put it in our now and show that story of St Nektarios is live to you, and that you are from now talking to him.
Thank you. You're correct, and I appreciate what you have to say about it. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Goran. Yes, I had another question from our audience member. Would you, Yelena, be interested now in making a motion picture about? This was from one of our audience members who spoke earlier about the life of Saint Nikolai Velimirovich, particularly his efforts between the two world wars. So that was a question we had. This perhaps ties us. Yes. What do you think?
Saint Nikolai Velimirovich, in my opinion, is one of the greatest thinkers of our time, or any time. He was a Christian saint, but he has transcended with his work that limit we talked about between religion and the law and love. You know, he has gone beyond, I think, and I think that his writings would appeal to anybody, regardless of their. So he's definitely somebody whose life was is very appealing. I feel very close to him. I actually had visited recently Celia and Lelic, where St. Justin Popovic and St. Nikola Velimirovic. This was like just recently when I was in Serbia. I don't know what to say. If opportunity had aroused, I would be inspired, because he's somebody that I read quite often, and I feel that he's on that level where he's simply universal and outside of time, and space. So that's definitely. I would recommend him, if anything else, for anybody to read his writings, and I think anybody could relate to him. But yes, of course, if again, any of these projects, we would have to, there's one way you can make a good documentary, or if you're gonna go into a filmmaking, then it goes back to what are we making the film about? Okay, we are making a film about somebody, but it has to be more specific than that. So we would have to, So yes, of course, I'm open.
Thank you so
Sorry,
much.
can I just add a quick comment? I think I recently read somewhere, but I forgot where, so please do forgive me, that somebody asked at the time, some 30 years, I suppose, after the proposal of St Nektarios on Mount Athos, who is the greatest saint? And he replied, St Nektarios. Because it's been 30 years since he reposed and they're still gossiping him. And it's interesting because now when you open the topic about Saint Bishop Nikola Velimirovic, because he seems to be misinterpreted and a stumbling point, and for that matter, a matter of public debates. Of, and accused of many things, I think misunderstood from his writing or purposely interpreted in the way they were. So yes, that just reminded me about yes, the
There is a connection.
Yes, yes.
Well,
Yes.
I think all of these great men have been misunderstood but they have given us so much, and they maybe are more appreciated after the fact, and the future generations. As a matter of fact, I personally, I can add to this, there are those two, the St. Nektarios has written a lot of things. And I want to, as the film is coming out, I want to point people out to learn, as they find out about him, to read his writings, because he was also very contemporary and he wrote amazing things. And I think him both, and St. Nikola Velimirovic, they have yes, they're some people didn't agree with, and even it's funny. I was in Aegina, in the monastery of St Nektarios a month ago, and the abbess told me, I think St Nektarios is still getting prosecuted, because of some things that were happening. It's interesting because and that's why he's such a great saint. So maybe there are some people that give us such great truths and inspire us that somehow, I don't know why they maybe those that like to control everything and like to just put everything in one little small box, I have a problem with, or something. I don't know. It's interesting.
I just wanted to say, when you said you were talking before discussing about Andrei Tarkovsky, my take on the film was that wherever Tarkovsky was, and he was in a great place, right, as a filmmaker, my personal impression about your film was that that's where you continue. And I thought that was beautiful, because it wasn't copying Tarkovsky, of course. And I think anyone else who tried did not succeed. That's another thing, because you can't copy something authentic. That's very difficult. So I think your film continues. And I don't know, but I can't speak of your film that you would love it. I don't know. That, yeah.
Thank you. It's an honor, obviously. You know, I definitely wasn't that wasn't. But yes, he was one of the best. And what's interesting about Tarkovsky, now we were talking about him, just not more as not as filmmaker, but it was a interesting part of his personality. That's something that I heard, and it alludes to the fact that actually if you get to know him maybe through some of his reactions, and you can create somewhat of an image of what kind of person he was, maybe you can understand why he worked the way he worked. Like, for example, a lot of people, as you say, they were always impressed by his work and they tried to copy him. Fellini was impressed by him, so was Angelopoulos. And I remember, and interestingly enough, even though Angelopoulos is very well respected here in Greece, is a great director, because my producer had worked with him, so I know some personal things. I know that he had a big ego as a human being, which directors usually do, but not all of them. Now, this is a trick thing here. When they asked Tarkovsky, what do you think about when he was still alive, they found him somewhere, and they ran after him and says, what do you think about, please, can you say something, Mr. Angelopoulos, because he is such a great admirer of your work and all of that. And he said, to be honest with you, I'm not that impressed, because I can see that he is in love with himself. So now we're going to the point that Tarkovsky must have been very spiritual. I mean, I don't know him personally, but that's what we were talking about. He was going after the truth. And how do you get to that real truth where you talk about film gives me joy and peace? You know, you have to go into extreme self-denial. You have to go through the self, sacrifice into extreme humility. You know, and I think that Tarkovsky must have had that, and that's what had evoked that kind of work. Which, if he would have to say that about Angelopoulos, if he were to say, "Hey, I'm not impressed by his work. I don't know the guy personally, but I can see on the screen that he's in love with himself." So do you know what I'm saying? Now
Yeah.
it's.
Yes. I think that Tarkovsky did write in his book that he did describe and did say about sacrifice and about what art is. Otherwise, it's not so. And also described his own, in a way, spiritual, state. You can understand, yeah, from his writing. Yes.
So that's interesting.
That's correct.
Thank you so much, Yelena, Dr. Radovic. Yes, if we can, maybe we have time for one more question, because I realize we've gone over, we have, I think, almost 90 minutes, which is great. I think we can continue. I would continue all night personally, but I think if we have maybe time for one more question, and then we can, I think, slowly wrap up, if that's all right with everyone. But does anybody else have another question they would like to ask Yelena while we're here? Yes, I had, so maybe I can be a bit, well, I'll ask a question I received earlier and one I received just now, and maybe they connect. Perhaps Yelena can tell us. One is, we never touched so much upon the subject. We hadn't, I mean, you had actually spoken about it quite a bit, but what's the role of the music in the film? I mean, how did you do that? And perhaps that ties to the final question. Now that you've made the film, did it reflect in your life now? And what are the next steps? Maybe that can connect us with future discussions, and we hope to bring you back, obviously, and really look forward to seeing your new work, and also, of course, to seeing Man of God get a full kind of release and people seeing it. But if we can perhaps connect the music, and then now the relationship of the film to your life now, and what you intend to do next.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. It's a good question. I think it's good to summarize with this because, as I said, Zbigniew Preisner, I was very, very lucky I mean, beyond lucky to had a chance to work with somebody like that. It came through the monastery of Atopedi. Again, somehow they played a big, mysteriously big part in this film. Preisner wanted to work in Greece. That was his wish. He loves Greece very much. And he's somebody, I mean, if you listen to his music, that also is very internal. It works from inside out. I've spoken to him about this. He would agree with this. And to talk about, just I wanted to say one more thing, that there was an actress, Eleonora Duse, who was considered one of the greatest actresses of all time. You know, in the book, one of the books that she had written, she spoke about that truthfulness that we talked about. And she said, it's like, for example, she said there are two composers that she had mentioned in an example. She says, when we listen to Beethoven, she said what's amazing, he always focuses on an emotion, on the truth, in the moment. And that's all it is. It's not about him as a person. We go back to that, but he focuses on the emotion and on the truth. Where we're listening to Wagner, you can hear in his music that he is in love, that he is celebrating himself, that he has a need of being glorified. Where Beethoven, you don't get any of that feel, where it's only the music it's just so specific and it goes directly into the emotion and therefore it affects you so direct. And so she said, this is how I work. Now we were talking about an actress. Now Preisner has works in the same level, so he was able to elevate this whole thing that I have done on the next level, and to bring it to. I think the music had been extremely important here, and who had done music for my film. So I don't know if that makes sense what I've said right now. It definitely had brought the film on a different level, because it was done in a certain way, and he's just kind of with what he did and the continuity had brought it and closer to people's hearts. And so that's to answer with the music. And then also I have personally learned so much from working with him. Obviously film is a rhythm, you know, music is a rhythm, and that obviously if the music is done not to again pay attention to the music but to focus on the emotion, which is very much what he did, that it will have the effect that it had, you know, in my film, and that's his genius. So what he has done, the second question was that is it about my future? Forgive me.
Yes, what is it, how does the film now reflect in your life now that you've finished with it? What is your, I guess, relationship to the film now that it's out there, but then also what do you intend to do next? I mean, I mentioned some of the projects you have in mind, and we've spoken about some of them, but perhaps what you would like to share with our audience, like what do you intend to do?
Well, first of all, you know, my film was like my baby. Right now, it doesn't belong even to me anymore. It's slowly belonging to those who are watching it. And they will carry it on. I slowly have to let go of it in a way. I'm happy that it has such a strong effect on people. That was my intention from the beginning. And what it did to me, making film about this subject, because it was a challenging thing to do, it has given me at least a little bit of amount of confidence and in my future work. For example, the film about Greta Garbo that I've written originally to as my vehicle as an actress, I'm no longer interested in playing the role because after reading the script, my own script, after so many years, I saw it from a director's point of view, and I feel I have so much more to offer as a director, and I can't do both at the same time because of the level of intensity that I like to bring to the work I'm doing. You know, it would be too much. So I find myself, I actually discovered that this is where I feel the most comfortable, is to direct. So actually that's what this film has done for me, and I'm very grateful, and I'm looking forward to the future projects, whether it's directing Greta Garbo, There is another project called That Serious. It's a story that deals with domestic violence that I haven't written, somebody else had written. And it was written for Martin Landau. When Martin Landau was still alive, he was willing to play the lead role in the film. I actually had a chance to have, I met Martin and I actually did a rewrite on the script, even because it was before I directed Man of God. So I was just doing it more as a producer and helping as a writer. He was very happy with what I did, but now I'm going to actually direct it. He's unfortunately passed on, but we've have some other actors, very well-known actors, are getting attached. So that could be my next directing project. Then there is another story that would be more along the lines of St Nektarios, which is Moses the Black. What I feel inspired by that story because it's a story of somebody who had a extremely it was like basically a gang member, if we can bring it nowadays, somebody who is extremely violent, a so-called bad person who had turned around completely and become a saint, become somebody who had found something that was more valuable in his life, and not only that, he was willing to die as a martyr at the end. So I find that the story could be very inspiring for people to also relate to him on some level, and to give them inspiration and hope that they can find their way in life, you know, and there's always a way. There's always a way out of darkness, you know.
That's a perfect end, I want to say, Yelena, or a beginning, because really I'm grateful that you took the time to be here, and I'm looking forward to people watching this film, sharing it with us, but also your future work, because I can definitely say it is inspiring. And I had actually people I had spoken to today in preparation for this masterclass had told me there was they had said even like, I never go to the cinema, and this was a person who's quite young as well, like in their 20s. They said, I never go to the cinema. The kind of films that are on, it doesn't interest me. But as soon as this film was on, I went. So wow. It's a really powerful thing. But if we can just conclude by saying, I think a lot of what you said, and I like that you said you cannot dramatize saintliness. And this kind of reminds me of what I read, what Saint Sophrony the Athonite, whose relics we have in the monastery of St John the Baptist in Essex, what he says is God doesn't like drama, and God there is no drama. So, and this is so nice because it's kind of relates to your film, but then also what he said, and we've spoken about truth a lot. And what's interesting, perhaps in the Western context, is truth is often seen as a what, but he says, that's often the mistake. In the Orthodox tradition, and what it connects to your film, truth is who? It's Christ, right? So it's yes. A person, and it's that dimension that I think we can really see the connection between, well, we see it in Tarkovsky's work, but we see it really uniquely and so in such a fascinating way in this new film. So I hope people will, we had some also greetings from a father, I think it's Father Christodoulos from the St Nektarios Church in London. So he apologized, he had to leave, but we will send him this afterwards. And there was a lot of others. He had greetings also from the Archbishop of Theatre in Great Britain, Nikitas, and our own Bishop Raphael, and many others in preparation for this. Also from Lazarica in the Serbian Church in Birmingham, and many others across the UK. So I'm very grateful you took the time to be with us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. All the best to everybody.